So not long ago, I finished watching my second Sundance film premiere, whatever, for this festival. This is probably going to be the last one I'll watch. There were different ones that I was interested in, but I just settled on two that interested me the most, especially after this one initially premiered. I was hearing so much good buzz about it that I was like, okay, I'll watch the second showing, because if you don't know how the Sundance Film Festival works, you can now watch the films online. And so basically they have a premiere, which if you watch that one, you can participate in the Q&A after that usually happens. You can, type your questions or whatever. But then like a day or so later, they have the second viewing. And that one, I think that one might be made available for like a 24-hour period, because it's been the second viewings that I've watched, and they tell you the block of time it's available, and once you start watching it, you have 5 hours to complete the film, and then you can watch a replay of the live Q&A that occurred at the premiere. So anyway, this particular film was called Piggy. It's a Spanish movie, so the title in Spanish is Cerdita. And it's actually based on, I found this out after I was researching the film and then watching the Q&A after, and also I went to this source material. It was based on a short film by the same name with the same actress in it playing the same title character. The actress's name is Laura Galán, and the character she plays is Sara. And so right before I was getting ready to film this, I went and just skimmed through the short film, and the portion of it that it's about is pretty much exactly how they show it in the movie. It's just the short film was done about 4 years ago. I found it interesting that the character is played by an actress in her mid-30s, and she's supposed to be like a teenager or college student or something like that. I think probably a teenager. But anyway, the premise of the story is Sara, she lives in this little small town in Spain, and she's mercilessly bullied by this group of teenage girls, one of whom used to be a friend of hers. And now this former friend is kind of like hanging with the cool chicks, like the mean girls. The former friend isn't on the same level of cruel as the others that are bullying Sara, but she doesn't speak up. She doesn't try to stop them from being complete assholes to her. So, she's not, in Sara's eyes, she's about as bad as the girls that are picking on her, and probably also a feeling of betrayal that she has, because they had been friends. They even have like this friendship bracelet that they both wear, and so you can imagine how much pain that causes her, on top of the fact that she's just being treated so horribly. But anyway, the premise of the story is, and if you watch the short film, it lays it all out what this film is about, except this film goes into much more depth about her and the events that happen after the story that takes place in the short film. So she's bullied by these girls. She goes to the pool one day. The pool is empty. There's this guy in the pool, and she doesn't really interact with him much. And these girls come along and they start to bully her. She gets in the water to just kind of escape them. She goes under the water to try to just block out all the noise that they're making. And the guy gets up and leaves the pool. And then the girls come down and they start to harass her even more. And so then later and they steal her clothes. Later she's on the way home. And these aren't spoilers, because the premise of this movie, the summary, the plot, it's revealed basically in the description. So I'm not telling you any spoilers, but on the way home, she's just walking in her bathing suit because that's all she's been left with. And she comes across this man again. And through their interaction in that particular scene, she sees that this man has kidnapped these bullies. And so rather than intervene or try to help, she just kind of turns a blind eye, because her emotions are still very raw from what she just went through with these girls. So then that's where the short film ends. The full-length film, in addition to stuff that it was showing before the whole scene in the pool and everything, the full-length film goes into much more detail as far as things that happen after and the guilt that she's feeling and how she's trying to keep it quiet, what she knows, and this strange understanding that develops between her and this killer guy, because he's a serial killer basically, and how she's keeping the secret, and he's sort of, oh, I forgot to mention that when she sees what he's doing with these girls, and he was there observing the bullying that happened, he leaves her a blanket to cover herself with. So there's this gesture of kindness that he has shown to her. And so she feels this sense of, throughout the rest of the movie, you know, she's scared of him, but at the same time, she feels this sense of loyalty to him because he's been nice to her when these other girls had not been. And so there's this conflict that's playing out in her, you know, in her mind because of all this, and also trying to keep quiet what she knows. And it was just very interesting to watch this play out, because you get completely where her mindset is. There was one time at the end where she made no sense to me at all. There was a scene that happened. I thought it was going to go one way. It went another way, which was kind of like along that formula that you're used to. And then after that particular immediate moment, there was something that she did, or a way that she reacted. I'm like, really? You know, that was like the only point in this movie that sort of made me like, what? But I would say as a whole, this film was actually very well done. It's not long. It's only about 90 minutes. And the director's name is Carlota Pereda. And I think she's got some more films coming up that she's going to be directing, and I liked what she did with this, so I'm definitely going to be checking out the other films that she's involved in, especially when she mentioned the genre, which is the type of thing I'm into. So I'm really curious to see what she's going to do in the future, because I think she's pretty talented, and I have always kind of had more of an tendency, or more of admiration for films and TV shows that come out of Spain as opposed to Latin America. This is just in general, just because they seem to have, they seem to produce more types of stories that I like, as opposed to things from Mexico, yet I prefer the Latin American, the Mexican dialect of Spanish as opposed to the Spain Spanish. But anyway, whatever. I definitely think that she's a director to, you know, keep an eye on, and I'm curious to see, like I said, where her career is going to take her. Some other things about this film that I noted as I was watching it, about the character of Sara. It sets it up very, very clearly, very early on from the beginning. She's quite introverted, she's picked on, and yet she almost admires the bullies from afar, like she wants to be part of them, but they are so, you know, they're so cruel to her. But you know how it is, like how awful bullying can be for kids, and it really hits home the trauma that this can cause in people. And it doesn't help that she kind of has a bit of a dysfunctional-ish family, and yet they're not terrible. I mean, her mother's protective of her. Underneath it all, her mother loves her, her father loves her, but they don't understand her, and she hasn't been telling them the stuff that's been happening with her. There were some funny moments throughout this movie, and not like super hilarious, but some just humorous parts that happened, like especially with dialogue. There's a point where her father is missing his cell phone, and the wife goes downstairs to look for it, and when she finds it, she says it's right here on the floor, and the husband says, like, I swear I looked everywhere, and the wife says, yet I'm the one who went downstairs. I mean, just little funny things like that. There was also another part where Sarah's skulking around because she'd been sort of trying to do some investigation and find out stuff. And when she comes home and she's trying to clean up her dirty clothes, and she's hiding, and her mother comes in and catches her. Her mother always catches her. She cannot hide from her mom. And that's another kind of little recurring sort of thing that goes on in the film. And her mother thinks that she's been doing laundry because she's trying to hide the fact that she got into food she wasn't supposed to be getting into. And she was asking her, like, what did you eat? And Sarah said, yogurt. And it was just funny because it's like I said, it's a Spanish language film. And so just hearing the interaction in Spanish, it was funny. And just because of the way she was talking. And then her mother doesn't believe that she ate yogurt. She's like, tell me what it is. And she said, biscuits and chocolate. And her mother said, you're starting your diet tomorrow. I don't know. That struck me really funny, that interaction, just little moments like that. Like I said, this was as a whole not really very humorous, but those little elements sprinkled in sort of helped lighten the mood a little bit and kind of made it just interesting to see the dynamic with her and her family. Something else that was standing out to me as I was watching this, so you've got the issue of bullying, and then you had the issue of her very obvious weight. She's morbidly obese, and they do show scenes of her where she is, well, she's obviously a stress eater. So when she gets really, really uptight and stressed, it shows her going and getting into this hidden stash of absolute junk and gorging on it, and the almost high that she seems to get from it. And that was actually almost disturbing to watch that. And what I was thinking of when I was watching that scene was, it reminds me of like people that are doing drugs and they shoot up or sniff or whatever, and they get this high from it. It's equally as disturbing to watch something like that because of the similarities between like what happens in the brain when people are addicted to food and also addicted to drugs. It triggers the same areas in the brain or something like that. Now, the downside is that we all need food to survive. And so there's this fine line that can be crossed, with eating for survival and for your body's nutrition, and then going over that and eating to the point where you are creating a health problem for yourself. And I felt like it was an important thing to show because obviously it kind of it demonstrates where her mind's at because of everything that she's got going on, and yet it demonstrates also this vicious cycle. She's bullied because she's obese, yet she continues to make life choices with as far as what she puts in her body that continue that cycle of her doing things to herself that is not good for her. And yet the abuse around her continues, and then she turns to the food to make herself feel better. And it's just like, it's this very complex sort of really awful, vicious cycle that you see played out. And I felt like it was interesting that they showed that and, kind of demonstrated what she was doing to deal with the pressures, and yet this thing she was doing was just making it worse for herself, if that makes sense. Anyway, those were disturbing scenes, and it just reminded me of like why I don't like to see things like drug movies, because it disturbs me to see the terrible things people do to themselves. And it's kind of similar, different, because like I said, we need to eat food, but it's similar in that it's such a self-destructive type of thing that she was doing. But fundamentally, she's a very sympathetic character. She's treated so horribly by so many people around her, and you just want to intervene and try to help her. And she's confused about the feelings that she has, about what she knows has been happening, or what she knows happened to these bullies, and also this bad guy who has been friendly to her, has been one of the few people ever to be friendly to her, and he's this very bad guy. It's just this weird sort of complex stuff going on, and it's very interesting to watch. And I was curious to see how it was going to end up. And there was a very effective thing that happens at the end where you're led to believe something, and you're like, wow, okay, I don't really feel good about this. And then shortly after that, you see something else has been revealed, and you're like, oh, okay, all right. I'm trying to be super vague because I don't want to give it away, but basically, just kind of to wrap this up, I think I've touched on everything that I made notes about. To wrap this up, this was a pretty solid horror type film that explores, of course, other sort of themes, bullying, mental and emotional abuse, obesity issues, eating issues, unhealthy relationships with food, and family dynamics and stuff like that. I felt like it was put together very well. At only 90 minutes, it told a pretty effective story, and certainly something that I'll probably remember for quite a while. This is something I wouldn't mind rewatching, which is weird because the other film that I saw, you know what I think it was? I think the reason why I could rewatch this one more often than Watcher, I think it was because it's also the environment. There's a bigger cast. Many more characters are involved. It's not just a focus only on one person in this sort of lonely environment. The little town where she lives, it's cute. It's a quaint little village place. It's small, like one of the small towns where everybody knows everybody. And the environment in Watcher, there's just a handful of characters that make up the bulk of the plot. It's in this cold-looking, almost barren-looking city. It's in Romania. I can't even remember the city where it takes place in, but just like, and it also looks like it takes place during cold months, like a gray, overcast. It also might be the color palette that they used, or the colors, whatever, that they used. It was kind of just seemed constantly overcast, gray, dreary, cold. And so that doesn't really generate emotions in me that make me want to go back to that. Whereas this particular movie, it's warm, it's in the heat of summer, there's all these different characters interacting, and some sort of comedic moments tied in. And so that's why I feel like this one for me was, I wouldn't say it was a better viewing experience, just that this one could be more rewatchable for me. I wouldn't mind seeing this again. I felt like it was certainly interesting experience the first time around, and demonstrates that this director can tell a pretty effective story in a not a super long amount of time, in other words. So both of these movies that I saw were about an hour and a half, and I feel like the pacing for both of them, even for this one, was very well done. The events of this story take place over, I think, like maybe a day and a half, 2 days, something like that. So anyway, yeah, glad I was able to jump in and watch some films from Sundance. I'll probably do it again next year. Hopefully there'll be as much of an offering next year as there was this year. No, there probably will be the same amount, but what I mean is, when I say as much of an offering, there were several films I was interested in. So hopefully the same will hold true for 2023, and we'll have some new cool material to check out. So anyway, okay, I guess that's it for this. Don't have anything else. I'm going to wrap it up. See you guys later.